Shalom is real. I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh being who the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai being his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And there's no God beside them. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone for being faithful witnesses to the Holy Spirit. Salutations to the elect, whom the Lord have given ears to hear. Now, I want to harp on something I've noticed, throughout my day yesterday, and which leads me to this video I had looked up. As you see, is monogamy natural? So, long story short, there's this couple that I guess you can call them a family friend, so to speak. And I had to go see them yesterday. And you can tell, well, they've been together for a little while. They've been together for a long while, actually. And you could tell they're at that point in age where they kind of, it's like, damn, you again type shit, It's like restless. And it's not to say, they don't still love each other. But, when you're around somebody too much, it's, it can become, or they can become irritating to you. And which had me thinking how, marriage in this place, everything in this place, marriage being one of the things, is unbalanced. Here it is, you're taught as a man that you can only have one woman. Once you get married, that's that. Whereas even biologically speaking, they say what a man, he produces hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of sperm each day. Whereas a woman, produces one egg a month. All right. So even biologically speaking, a man is primed to have many women. As is written, be fruitful and multiply. And if it takes 9 months to have a child, how can that be? Right? There was actually a video, this African sounding woman. I said sounding because I'm not exactly sure where she's from. She has an African accent. But even she was speaking on the fact of, biologically speaking, as I had mentioned, that's not, it's not natural. Now it says, as you see, the title is Monogamy Natural. All right, so this is a 2-minute clip, fair use. I'm going to play a little bit of it. Lord willing, I don't get a copyright strike. Let me do some.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Okay, so let's play that video now, which again, Lord's willing, I'll be okay with playing it.
Got a pile of clothes you never wear anymore? Turn them into cash with Vinted. Snap a photo.
Monogamy natural. If not, why is monogamy natural? If not, why do we have a high expectation of it inside relationships? Is it natural?
Can of worms. I'm gonna say this. Is it natural? Is processed food natural? Are you still eating it?
Is it good for you though?
This is what I'm saying. So let's say that it's not natural. Just because it's not natural, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to do. And again, it has something to do with what commitment did you make.
And she just disregarded the point of, is it good for you though? You know, that was a terrible example.
To the person that you're with.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, don't make commitments that you can't honor. But then that takes a level of self-awareness.
Yeah. I think we're in a culture, especially millennials, where we view relationships very differently. Like, we talk a lot about open relationships, LGBTQ+, like all these different polyamory, all of these things, right, are different. I can't even remember all of them, right?
And that's a good point too, because when you, even the scriptures say, in the last days, men shall be lovers of their own selves, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. So when the conversation of monogamy or polygamy comes up, is viewed more from a, how do I feel, how can I fulfill my desires standpoint. But we're going to get into it in a little bit. Is it natural? That's the point. Is it natural? Meaning, is it something that is it an innate, is it an innate attribute? Right? Because here at Great Millstone, whenever you ask us a question, we're going to ask you, what does various words mean? Because you have to quantify the question.
They're very present, and I think we have to acknowledge that, like he was saying, this patriarchal, this deep-rooted things is not for everybody. You know, like, you have to choose what is best for you, and if you want to be with multiple people, as long as everybody is in full consent with that idea, that choice, you good.
Because it's a separate thing.
I would say, we'll keep it 100 right here. I don't think monogamy is not, it is, I think it is natural. I believe that, well, it's not natural, that people, they want to be with other people. Why so? Because we change. Love changes. You change as a person from 18 to 20 to 30. You can change your attraction to people. The same, anytime someone is in a relationship, it's quick to get bored. And this is one of the reasons why people cheat. You know, we want to look for something exciting. We want to look for something new, you know, fresh. You know, it makes it more exciting. It gives you that, brings you that joy and excitement you had in the beginning honeymoon stages. You know, it's not natural. But what we need to do, what most people won't, is discipline.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I made this commitment, self-awareness, like y'all been saying earlier on. You know, I need to make sure I'm good. Like you said, if you see that fat booty or this, whatever, you know, you turn away, you look away, you go the other way. Hop on the game, go hoop, do something, take a shower, you know.
It's like we don't want to challenge ourselves. Yeah, no, it's not easy, but life is not easy. So when you find somebody that's worth it, like, you challenge yourself to do the hard thing.
Now again, you know, there was some decent points made, you know, as far as discipline, and we're gonna get into it. You know, we're gonna get into it. So again, is monogamy natural? That's the point. So we're gonna go into the word. Let's look up etymology. So it says both monogamy and polygamy share the Greek word gamos, meaning marriage, derived from the ancient Greek monogamia, meaning single marriage. Breakdown of monos, single, gamos, marriage. So it says the term entered English in the 1610s via French. In late Latin, monogamia. It originally referred to the practice of marrying only once in a lifetime, rather than having one partner at a time. Polygamy, all right, meaning state of marriage to many spouses. Poly meaning many, and gamos meaning marriage. Now to go into the word natural. The word natural originated around 1300 from the Middle East, naturel. I believe that's how you say it. Middle English, I'm sorry, naturel. Derived from Old French and directly from Latin, naturalis, by birth, according to nature. It stems from natura, nature, inborn character, courses of things, which is rooted in natus, the past participle of nasi, to be born. The term originally denoted qualities that are inborn, hereditary, or innate. Now, my next question would be to that panel. What is your, are you Christian? Do you believe in the Bible? So, in the Bible, there's a law in Exodus 21:10 that reads, if he takes him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. This law regulates a situation where a man takes another wife. If he does not command polygamy, it regulates it so the first wife is not neglected. So this brings up the point of discipline to where, yes, you can have multiple wives, but economically speaking, it may not be in your best interest. Okay? But again, naturally speaking, which essentially goes into the Bible, right? How does the Lord, what does the Lord say? Is it okay in the Lord's eyes? Did the Lord create man and woman to be this way? All right. And lawfully speaking, it is. And again, we're going to, read more of what the Bible says. So it says, does the Bible allow women to have multiple husbands? No. Biblical law permits a woman. No biblical law permits a woman to have multiple husbands. In other words, polyandry. By contrast, several men, right, it says there is no law regulating it, no example of it being approved, no case of it being practiced among Israel. By contrast, several men in the Old Testament had multiple wives. Abraham, Jacob, David, Solomon, though those arrangements often led to conflict. Right? And I would like to see what they mean by that. But the point still stands, is that lawfully it's not wrong. As a matter of fact, when you go into the patriarchs, you had Jacob's wives encouraged him to deal with their handmaids because they understood the concept of marriage. All right, how the concept of sex, and they appreciated their men, their husband. They wanted to continue on his lineage. All right, because they were a barren, right, and they wanted to give him children. They wanted to serve their purpose. So it says, why the difference? It says, one, going into creation pattern. A man shall leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Right? So this is what makes a man and a woman married. They have sex. Cleaving unto one flesh means a man puts his penis into a woman's vagina. Okay? The wording presents one man and one woman as the foundational pattern. Right? Which that's off. Again, because if that were to be the case, why would the Lord write in his law that a man is allowed to have multiple women? All right. Now, again, the balance would be that you have to hold down the first wife or the second wife or the previous wife, and you are not to neglect her in any way. All right. So it says lineage and inheritance laws. And case in point, when you go into the account of Jacob and Leah, right, and Rebecca, Jacob, he was more fond of Rebecca over Leah. And the Lord pretty much said, and he was pretty much neglecting Leah. So what the Lord did is that he made Rebecca barren, and he allowed Leah to bear children. Right? So this also shows you that in the Bible, you are not to neglect your first wife. And again, proving, well, I mean, that's another topic for another time, but it proves that the laws were always around since the beginning. Right? So it says, point 2 is lineage and inheritance laws. Israel's tribal system. It says, see Book of Numbers and Book of Deuteronomy, depended heavily on clear paternal lineage, tribal inheritance through the father. Polyandry will create legal and inheritance complication in that structure. So it says in the New Testament, now there were some accounts, for example, if a man was to be married and if that man died, then his brother would go into that man's wife. So the man that died, his brother would go into his wife to preserve his brother's seed. All right. Now it says point 3, it says New Testament standard. In the New Testament, the expectation moves clearly toward monogamy. And I'll say this, not even that is considered a that pretty much goes into how a woman is able to remarry if her husband dies. Okay? The woman in the scriptures, I'll just leave it at that, Salaki. Point 3 is New Testament standard. In the New Testament, the expectation moves clearly toward monogamy. For example, church leaders are dedicated as the husband of one wife, and marriage is presented symbolically as Yahushua in the church. Okay? Which these, when you go into it, there were various offices in the church which constituted a lot more responsibility, in which case, you could not tend to your wife or multiple wives. So the men of the Lord was saying, bishop, was that 1 Timothy 3:2? Right? These were exceptions, of course, but as the old saying goes, the exception does not override the rule. So 1 Timothy 3:2, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desired a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker. So this is essentially explaining the job description of a bishop of the church. Now, every man wasn't a bishop. So, the chat was wrong on that one. But it says the Old Testament regulates polygamy. It says one man, multiple wives does not present it as ideal, never regulates or permits polyandry. Right? So we gave clarification on this. Now, I touched on earlier the concept of hypersexualism. It says hypersexualism, more commonly called hypersexuality, or sometimes compulsive sexual behavior, refers to an excessive preoccupation with sexual thoughts, urges, or behaviors that are difficult to control and begin to negatively affect a person's life. Okay? Which in this life today, according to 2 Timothy, let's grab it. Right? Because that's what we deal with in these last days in regards to, it being perilous times. So it says, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good. Right? So marriage and all that surrounds it in this day and age is looked at as almost taboo. Not I don't know if that would be the right word, but it's not truly understood. It's understood in all the wrong reasons. Right? Whereas divorce rate is out the roof. Again, incontinent. A lot of adultery is happening these last days. Despisers of those that are good. Lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. So that's where you have the alphabet community and that aspect of marriage. And hell, today you can get married to a fucking tree. But again, naturally speaking, it was between man and woman. All right. In which case a man could have multiple women if he so choose, and a woman was stuck with her husband until the day she died, or until the day he died. She was also able to remarry. But and even in marriage, when you read the scriptures, we were instructed to marry amongst our own nation. Now, men did have, he did have concubines of the other nations, but we instructed to marry men of our own nation. Women of our own nation. Right, in the book of Tobit, in the time where our people was going off and, marrying other women of other nations, Tobit instructed his son Tobias to what? To take a wife of his own lineage. All right, because it's about nation building. Right, and then also, our women. It was just order. It's about order at the end of the day. All right. So it says, it's not simply having a high sex drive. The key difference is loss of control, incontinent, and harmful consequences. In clinical context, it's often discussed under compulsive sexual behavior disorder. All right. Let me see what else. I was looking up something else. Right. So it says, biblically speaking, what was the purpose of sex? Biblically speaking, sex was created by God with specific sacred purposes, not just physical pleasures, but spiritual, relational, and generational purposes. Okay? And it's very easy to Salakia. I'm trying to think of the word. It's very easy to find an antidote to an issue, especially today's issues, by just going into the scriptures. But everybody has their opinion, and that therefore, arguments, disagreements, so on and so forth, can go on for days, and the answer is never really, or the problem is never really resolved. But it says procreation to multiply human life. The first command involving sex was to produce children, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. God created sex as the means to bring new life into the world through the union of man and woman, beginning with Adam and Eve. Now, in the kingdom to come, in God's kingdom, the scriptures say what? That a small one shall be a nation. Right? So that command is coming back to where men will have multiple women. All right? Hey, Isaiah 4:1. Because in these last days, the Lord is going to bring a lot of death. A whole lot of death. The Lord told Ezra that those that be saved in comparison to those that dies as a drop of water to a wave. So that's basically nothing. And I would assume, that there'll be more women that are saved than men. To the aspect of being fruitful and multiply, but that's me speaking as a man. Nevertheless, the scriptures, as I mentioned before, the scriptures say a small one shall be a nation. See if I can find that precept. Right, Isaiah 60:22. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, Yahweh, will hasten it in his time. Okay? So, in the times to come, even the least among our people, they're going to, 5 kids ain't going to be nothing. 100 plus. A strong nation. Hell, 1,000 plus, 100,000 plus. Remember, Israel is as the sand of the sea. So one man is going to have many, 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 many children. All right. But back at the topic, or back at the, this chat, it says unity to create a deep bond between husband and wife. Sex was meant to unite a husband and a wife into one flesh. All right. Which again, sex is marriage. So it says, Genesis 2:24, we read that. It says, this refers to physical union, emotional union, and spiritual union, which is correct. All right. It says pleasure, a gift within marriage. The Bible openly acknowledges sexual pleasure as a blessing inside of marriage. The Song of Solomon celebrates romantic and sexual love between husband and wife. Rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times. This soul's pleasure was intentional, not sinful, when within God's design. So it says strengthening the marriage covenant. Sex protects and strengthens marriage by maintaining intimacy and preventing emotional distance. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. It says sex. I wonder what this says in the NLT. Let's see something. First Corinthians 7:3. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. And again, this also promotes discipline. Because that's a lot. I mean, in addition to, a man, other jobs, whether he was a farmer or whatever else he had did, he has to, work on his wives. So you multiplying wives right now, you got a lot of work on your hands. And the scriptures say we always balance it out. Right now, all things are lawful, but all things are not expedient. Okay? Us as men, fighting for our crown, fighting for acceptance of Yahweh Shai, understanding that, having a wife is a job in itself. You got to ask yourself, is that something you're willing to do? Is that a responsibility you're willing to take on? Okay, the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, he gave us something to meditate on when, thinking about getting a wife or adding things to our life. Right, verse 35. Let's start at 33. Start at 32. I want you to be free from the concerns of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how to please him. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibilities and how to please his wife. His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord and holy in body and in spirit. But a married woman has to think about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband. I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. Right? So pretty much he's saying, like, listen, take it as you will. All right, I'm giving you my advice here. All right, nevertheless, the choice is yours. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord best with as few distractions as possible. But if a man thinks he's treating, well, we'll leave it at that because, is that? Yeah, so that's pretty much the point there. But you say strengthening the marriage, right? Back at the chat. So sex protects and strengthens marriage by maintaining intimacy and preventing emotional distance. Right? Sex in marriage is meant to build closeness, maintain emotional connection, prevent temptation from outside the marriage. It says, then this is a spiritual aspect. Marriage itself symbolizes the covenant between God and his people. Right? And in the Bible, 1 Corinthians pretty much lays it out. I want to say that's chapter 11. Right? So it says, let's start at the top. And you should imitate me just as I imitate Hamashiach. Christ means anointed. In the Hebrew would be Hamashiach. I am so glad that you always keep me in your thoughts and that you are following the teachings I passed on to you. But there is one thing I want you to know. The head of every man is Yahushai. The head of woman is man. And the head of Yahushai is God. Right? So a woman is married to her man. And a man ultimately is married to Yahushai. Right? Whereas she looks up to him and the man looks up to the Heavenly Father. All right? And that's when things work for the good. Now it says, you read that part. I'm not going to keep going. So that's pretty much the point, man. You know, understanding marriage, understanding polygamy. And again, is it natural? All right, scientifically, we're just gonna go back over the points that was mentioned. Naturally, polygamy is natural. All right, and it's scientific, and most importantly, in the way the Lord intended things to be. You know, if it were not so, He would have not told us. He would have not given us. He would have not allowed it to be so. Okay. Now, a woman, her desire is to her husband. Stop. We just read that, right? In a woman's okay. Anyway, you know, woman's desire is to her husband. Hey, speaking of naturally, all right, because when you read Apostle Paul's writings, it's very relevant to us today, because in Apostle Paul's writing, he's writing to a people that have been so far removed from the conversation of what's right and wrong in accordance to God's laws. That's why, again, today it's like we can have a discussion and nobody brings up the scriptures, right? But Apostle Paul told us, he said, bear with me, I'm trying to remember where it, I think it's in Peter's, First Peter's. Maybe it's Second Peter's. Right. Ephesians. I thought it was one in Peter's, but nevertheless, Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Yahushua is the head of the church. And he is the savior of the body. Okay? So when you talk about, you know, saving your marriage, putting out the right mindset in accordance to what a marriage should be, you got to put Yahushua at the forefront. It is not Christ, it's Yahushua. Okay? Therefore, as a church is subject unto Yahushua, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives. All right? So the husband is to love his wife, you know, teach her things, of course, that he would like or that he likes. And, you know, just teach her in the right way. Husband, love your wives, even as Yahushua loved the church and gave himself for it, that he may sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word. Right? And that's another thing today. You know, if a man loves his wife, he's not going to allow her to go out into the street dressing provocatively. He's not going to allow her, essentially, to play the whore. You know? A woman should not have social media. Now, you know, people want to see this video and argue, but that's the fact. You know? A woman's body, a woman's beauty is only meant to be cherished by her husband. You know? And in that case, you kill adultery, you kill hypersexuality, which is an issue again in this society. You know? You ever seen a woman, one of the Muslim women dressed up in the, I think it's called the burqa, or what's the other one? That covers the whole face that you can only see the eyes. How you gonna lust after you don't even know how she looks? You know? You definitely cut it down. Hey man, so if that, shalom to the elect.